Hi guys, hi book friends, welcome back to Miss Willa's book club. I'm your host for this evening, Shelby, and today we are going to be going through my favorites and my least favorites of 2024. I cannot believe that it is already that time of year. How is it already December? How am I already doing a yearly wrap-up of sorts? This is absolutely crazy to me. Where did the year go? I cannot believe that we've been doing the podcast for like a year and a half. That is literally insane to me. I'm so thankful. Thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. We are just so grateful to have all of you. So we started Miss Willa's book club in, I believe it was June of 2023. I had just graduated pharmacy school and we knew that we loved books and we had been talking about it so often that we thought it'd be a good idea to start a book club podcast. So we also have an in-person book club which has just grown exponentially. We cannot thank everybody from the bottom of our hearts. Being able to have an issue finding a place to be because we have almost 20 women with us is just absolutely incredible. I never would have even fathomed in my wildest dreams that this would have come true for us. So thank you all so much. So today we are going to be going through Shelby's 2024 reading wrap-up of sorts. I'm going to go through my favorite books of each month. I'm going to go through my least favorites, and we're going to talk about why. I have my almost finished glass of wine because I had some technical difficulties before this, and so I'm finally getting started, even though I've been waiting to get started for quite a while. So I've got my wine that's almost gone. I've also got an amazing candle. So this is Starfall by Deep Soul Candles. Deep Soul Candles actually found us on TikTok and sent us a ton of candles. We have Zayden and Violet from Fourth Wing. We have Starfall and Enchanted, and I'm assuming those are from the ACOTAR series, but they smell so good. Now, a little bit about this company. These candles are non-toxic candles. They're from a coconut soy wax blend. They are 100% phthalate free. These all smell so incredible, and since they're book themed, they go perfectly when we are sitting down to record some books. And so oftentimes while we're recording, we'll have these candles going in the background. I just wanted to give a brief shout out because I know all of our book friends might really enjoy having candles burning while they are reading, especially if they're inspired by those books you're reading. So before we get into it, make sure to give us a follow so you don't miss out on any bookish adventures. We are looking ahead to our schedule for 2025. And so if you didn't already know, if you're listening on Spotify, there's actually a comment section down below. So go ahead and put your comments in on the books that we have to discuss next year, and we will easily be able to see it down there. But also we are very active on social media. And so you can DM us on TikTok or Instagram. Our username is Miss Willa's Book Club Pod, and we know that there is talk about TikTok potentially going away for those in the United States in less than a month. So if you guys are aware and you do love to listen to us and you love our TikToks, we're also posting on Instagram. So if you follow us on TikTok, go ahead and give us a follow on Instagram too. We would love to continue to connect with you, especially if something does happen to TikTok. Okay, and with that, let's get into it. Let's get into starting with January of 2024. My favorite book was Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood. This is the first book in the Crescent City series. We have Bryce, our favorite party girl, is thrown into chaos when a demon murders her closest friends. Yes, this is on the back cover. Yes, it is still one of my craziest plot twists because if you know us here on the podcast, we do not read the back of the book. But this is on the back of the book, so I'm not spoiling anything. Bryce finds herself at the heart of an investigation and will do whatever it takes to avenge their deaths. So now we do have multiple episodes on this book, and we loved deep diving this book specifically. In my opinion, this is the best book out of the series, and it is just so fun. There's so much action, there's so much adventure, and you just fall in love with the characters. even if they eventually get murdered. On to one of my least favorite books in January. I have Chosen by PC Cast. This is actually the third book in the House of Night series. I read these books when I was in high school, and I loved them then. They're such a guilty pleasure now. It's not like it's really hard reading. It's about vampires. It's like a darker high school, a magical high school kind of. It's really fun. However, I read some pretty good books in January, and so unfortunately it was my least favorite of the month. Okay, February, we have my favorite book in February was Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. This is the second book in the Empyrean series. It comes after Fourth Wing. I know everybody on here knows about Fourth Wing, even if you haven't read it. This book I have read twice. The first time I read it, I think I gave it a 4. I was like, oh my gosh, can we just get on with this? There's so much happening with Xaden and Violet. There's just this huge miscommunication trope, and all they do is freaking argue. However, the second time that I read it, when I was able to kind of filter out all of the details, it was bumped up to a 5-star. I loved this book so much. One of the things that drew me in before I even read it, the quote that we have from Xaden Ryerson: the first year is when some of us lose our lives. The second year is when we lose the rest of our humanity. If that does not tell you how this book is going to go and all of the trials and the tribulations that we have through this book, I don't know what is. We also have our podcast episodes on this book and on Fourth Wing, and we cannot wait to read Onyx Storm when it comes out in about a month. This book was so good to me because of the secrets. I actually didn't mind all the miscommunication that happened in this book. The jealousy, the biggest plot twist ever, which leaves me begging on how the series is going to continue. Literally, I have thought about this book all year long, especially in the last couple months while we gear up towards Onyx Storm coming out. Oh, this leads me to, unfortunately, my least favorite book of February. I read The Curse of Immortality by Akira Varma, and this was just, it was unfortunate because this book was sent to us, and I hate to rate a book that is sent to us so low. However, there were like a lot of spelling errors. There were a lot of sentences that were structured oddly. There were a lot of plot holes. Like, I really wanted to like it. I liked the premise of it, but I just unfortunately didn't vibe with the book, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. Okay, let's talk about March. All of the books that I read in March were 4 stars. How did I have such a good reading month? I didn't even read that much, which is absolutely crazy. My favorite, which is very shocking, is House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. And the reason that I say that this is so shocking is because when we reviewed this on the podcast, we do have 2 or 3 episodes on this one. We might even have 4. We covered this book for what felt like forever, and it took me 6 weeks. I'm not kidding you. 6 weeks to read this dang book. Why? Because this book was freaking action-packed. There was so much that happened in this book that it almost felt like nothing happened. It almost felt like there was too much that happened into a book. I almost think it should have been split up into 2. But you guys, even though at the time this book was not my favorite, I think I gave it 4 stars, and I think I even rounded it up from 3.5. You guys, I think I'm gonna have to bump this up to a 5. The reason for that being is I don't think I've stopped thinking about this book since, which is odd to me. This book, House of Flame and Shadow, put me in a 6-month reading slump. 6 months. I felt like I didn't want to pick up any books. I felt like nothing was good enough. And I don't know if it was just because there was so much in this book that I now expect every book to have that, or what's going on with it. But I'm not even kidding you. 6-month reading slump. A sham. What are you doing to me? If a book can do that, I feel like maybe it should be bumped up to a 5 stars, because yes, we learn a lot. Yes, a lot happens, but you know, just a little bit about House of Flame and Shadow. I'm going to put a little spoiler warning here. If you have not read ACOTAR or Throne of Glass, I'm going to say skip forward about 30 seconds because I'm just going to give a brief synopsis of the book, and unfortunately that might include spoilers. Okay, so House of Flame and Shadow. We have Bryce, who is stranded in a new world. and she's trying to get back to Midgard. She meets some of our favorite characters from A Court of Thorns and Roses, and they help her get back to her homeland. So we finally have the book that is connecting all of the series. Hopefully that will continue for the rest of the series. Hopefully we have more connections. There has been so much talk around this book because it's finally connecting all three of the series that we all love so dearly. And it's really exciting because we actually covered all of ACOTAR on the podcast. We covered Crescent City, so maybe we'll have to cover Throne of Glass. And especially after we read House of Flame and Shadow, hopefully we'd be able to find all of those little connections. Okay, my least favorite for March was The American Roommate Experience by Elena Armas. This is not the second book in the sequel to The Spanish Love Deception, but it is kind of in the same universe. It's a standalone, but it is like the second one that came out. It's got the blue cover on it if you guys have seen those before. So I really loved The Spanish Love Deception. The American Roommate Experience was just a contemporary romance, and that's totally fine. It's not bad. It just, I found for myself that I am not going to read a contemporary romance and it's going to keep me up thinking about it at night. Unlike House of Flame and Shadow. Okay, for April, I actually have two that are tied. The first one that I'm going to talk about is a book that completely took TikTok by storm. We have Powerless by Lauren Roberts. And to say that we had finally read Powerless was very exciting. We actually had a book club on this one. I think it was in May, but I read it in April. So a little bit about this book. This book is based in the kingdom of Ilya, which houses the exceptional, the empowered, the elites. The powers of these elites were gifted to them by the plague, but not everybody was fortunate enough to survive and then receive those gifts. Peyton Gray, our female main character in this book, was one of those ordinaries that has to thieve to survive until she is thrown into the purging trials. It's a brutal competition that showcases those elites' powers. That's all I can really say without spoiling it. But one thing that we absolutely loved about this book is that they have all of the fantasy tropes you could ever want. One of the things we also disliked about this book was that it had every fantasy trope you could ever want. This was like throwing all of those tropes together and just putting them all in a novel, which I know was exactly the point of this book. However, it just felt like it was a little cheesy at sometimes, even though this was my favorite book of April. And we also have a podcast episode on this one. One that we don't have a podcast episode on is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. I absolutely loved this book. I feel like this is a book that I will think about for a very long time. It had similar emotional value to me that The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue has. And so, very different book, very different premise, but it definitely had those emotional ties that I kind of want in a book. This made me fall so hard in love with the characters. You have a creepy house, you have dark vibes. I feel like this is a really good book that you want to read if it's around fall or winter, those like darker times of the year. If you're looking for an emotional book, The Study in Drowning is fantastic. Highly recommend to check it out. My least favorite book from April is A Kingdom of Blood and Salt by Alexis Calder. And there was nothing wrong with this book. It's just, it doesn't stick out to me. It seemed like a bunch of other fantasy books that I had read at that time. And so unfortunately, it was just my least favorite. I think I still gave it 4 stars. It was just my least favorite out of the books that I read that month. Getting into May, my favorite book that I read was 5 Broken Blades by May Corland. You guys, if you're watching the video, if you have seen the sprayed edges on these, oh my gosh, and the entire series is going to have these sprayed edges. I am so obsessed. It is so detailed. It is so beautiful. I absolutely loved this book. When we covered this on the podcast, we were really looking for something that was going to get us out of that reading slump, because both Jenna and I had been in this crazy reading slump since House of Flame and Shadow, and we were looking for something that's really going to grab us, it's really going to catch our attention. Also, I was looking at this on Goodreads, and how does this only have a 3.83 rating on Goodreads? That is absolutely wild to me, because this was such an easy 5 stars for me. Granted, it's a closed-door romance, so if you are looking for that spice, if you're looking for that nitty-gritty, getting into that romance, this is not going to be the book for you. There are romantic plot lines, which is very exciting, but there's no spice at all. This book was such a good time to me, and the world was so interesting. We have the 5 most dangerous liars in the land, and they have been mysteriously summoned to work together for a single project to kill the God King, June. And so we spend a ton of time creating this universe where we're getting all of these people together. This is a travel book, so if you like travel books, this one is going to be great for you. If not, maybe not so much, but that's okay. You guys are going to absolutely hate me for my least favorite book of May. I am so sorry. I apologize to all of the Ravenhood fans. I have The Finish Line by Kate Stewart. This is the 3rd book in the Ravenhood series, and you guys, I gave the rest of the series 5 stars. I loved the first 2 books. Granted, it was not what I expected. However, this book for me, it was so sad, and I just couldn't get past it. I think I got over 120 pages into this book, and I just could not get past it. So this is one that I really need to read. You have to convince me in the comments, because I cannot get past how sad and how basically nothing has happened. All right, y'all, we've got June. June, my favorite book of June was freaking Red Rising, which is so surprising to me because before this Red Rising series, I have never read a sci-fi series before. In fact, I don't know if I'd ever read a sci-fi book before. Absolutely wild. So for me to love this so much, I literally think about this series almost every single freaking day. I love this series so much. It did take me a really long time to get into it, and the first time I went through it, I was going back and forth between reading it and listening to it, and I've just found that that is not how I retain information. I can do that for just sweet little romance books, but I'm not going to do that for something so heavy. So Red Rising, you guys, freaking amazing. Here's a little bit of a synopsis for this one. Darrow is a red. He's the lowest caste in the color-coded society of the future. He works all day for a purpose to make the surface of Mars a more livable place. So this does take place on Mars. He discovers that him and his people have been lied to for centuries. Him and his people have been nothing more than slaves to a decadent ruling class, the Golds. There is justice, there is love, there is sacrifice, there's battle, there's action, there's flying to different planets. This book is so good, and I already cannot wait to reread it. My least favorite for June, we have Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. I listened to this, and I probably listened to about halfway through, and for those of you who don't know, I am a pharmacist by trade. The amount of times that the woman said, "I am a scientist," I just truly could not get past. It felt like anything that would happen, she would say, "I'm a scientist." Okay, we understand. I know that it was a different time. I know that women had it harder. I completely understand. However, I could not get past it. It was said so many times that I just could not do it. I could not do it anymore. So I did DNF the book. Comfort me, I totally get it. Some people absolutely love it. Okay, for July, I literally only had 2 books. I had Happy Place by Emily Henry and then Flawless by Elsie Silver. I don't know what was going on in July, but it was not it for me. So my favorite was Happy Place by Emily Henry. The premise is they broke up 6 months ago and they have not told their best friends. When they find themselves on a vacation with all said friends in a 1-bedroom situation, they have to pull off the ultimate fake dating situation. This is probably not going to be a good book for people who do not like the miscommunication trope, because that is the basis of this book. However, I normally don't like this trope, but I did like it in this book, and I had a great time with it. If you guys don't know, I traveled a ton this summer. I spent a lot of time in the car, which meant I spent a lot of time with audiobooks. I listened to this one on audiobook, and I absolutely loved it. It was so good to me. And then my least favorite is gonna have to be Flawless by Elsie Silver. Now, I did not dislike this book. I loved this book. We actually read this for our June July book club sometime in the summer. And I love cowboy romances. I basically lived one. And so I'm very, very excited about cowboy romances in general. I just think they're so fun, so precious, so sweet. Something about a rough and tumble man falling for a sweet, sweet woman. I absolutely love it. So I did not dislike this book, and I hate to even put it in my least favorite category. Okay, August. August was a really good reading month. I have Chasm and Valley by Stacey McKeown. If you guys have been listening to us, you know that we are absolutely obsessed with Stacey. We actually did an interview with her. We have covered Chasm. We have yet to cover Valley, but we are still planning on it. Also, I have I think it's LitJoy Crate versions of both Chasm and Valley, and how gorgeous are these books. I absolutely loved the books. I think that they were amazing. Just a little premise of the series. I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but we have Dawson, who is selected as a human sacrifice. But instead of death, she finds herself on a quest to save her people from the ledge, from the Icy Queen. I'm not gonna give you much more than that because I feel like it would spoil the series. So we're just gonna leave it at that. I'm just gonna say you guys have to read the series, and if you don't already follow Stacey on social media, go follow her. She's absolutely amazing. Okay, for my least favorite of August, I really wanted to love this, you guys. I really did. I thought it was directly up my alley. Unfortunately, my least favorite of August was The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. We actually did this one as our book club, which, how funny is it that most of these books that are either in my favorites or my least favorites, we've either done a podcast episode on or it's been our book club. That just shows you like how you find books is truly just from word of mouth. And oh, it's been so fun. It makes the podcast all so worth it because we've created such a fun book community that I'm obsessed with you guys, okay? So The Familiar. Back to the actual book that I was talking about. I thought this was going to be about vampires, and even while I was reading it, I thought it was vampires, and I still didn't really understand the premise of it. This book, the writing was so good. The writing was so beautiful. It was like a poetic book, and that makes it so unfortunate because even now, I couldn't even tell you the trials that happened in the book. I know there were some, but I couldn't tell you. I even did a podcast episode with one of our book club members, and this is just, it's so unfortunate that this was my least favorite book because I don't even think I could reread it and that it would be bumped up at all. It's so unfortunate. Moving on to September. For September, my favorite book was Morning Star by Pierce Brown. This is the third book in the Red Rising trilogy, the first original trilogy. I cannot say enough good things about this book. This series is literally so close to my heart. As I said with Red Rising, I already can't wait to reread the series. Like, it is so good, and I know I'm going to catch and appreciate so much more that happens earlier on in the series to make this so good. The way that this ended the first trilogy just absolutely blows my mind, and I loved it so much. Pierce Brown, whatever you're putting into this, keep doing it, because it is absolutely freaking amazing. Okay, my least favorite for September, which is such a bummer, is Court by Tracy Wolff, and this is the fourth book in the Crave series. I've been listening to the entire series, and I really enjoyed it. However, the way that the fourth one left off just didn't make me really feel invested to continue on with the series. Now, hold up. I know that you guys have been saying all on our TikTok, all on our Instagram, that we need to continue listening to it, that it just gets better, and that everybody kind of feels the way about the fourth book. I'm gonna need you to convince me. Put some comments below, DM us on Instagram, DM us on TikTok, let us know, do we really need to continue the series? Does it actually get better? Because right now, I'm just unfortunately not convinced, and that is such a bummer. That is such a bummer because I've loved the series up to this point. Moving on to October, which is my favorite time of the year. September, October, November are my favorite months. It starts to get cooler. It's fall weather. The leaves are changing. I'm starting to settle in. It is just my favorite time of the year. Which leads me to one of my favorite books of the entire year. My favorite book of October was Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. Goodreads says it's Caraval meets Throne of the Fallen. And it's a spicy, dark romantasy, which no wonder I loved it. I love dark romance. I love fantasy. I love the romantasy. Of course I liked it. This gives Danny Phantom vibes. So if you guys watched that when you were growing up, it totally gives those vibes. I'm absolutely obsessed with Blackwell, and there's a spicy scene in there, you guys, that I literally still think about to this freaking day. So in this book, we have a necromancer who needs help from a dangerous phantom to win a deadly competition called Phantasma, only to find that their partnership puts her at risk of breaking the game's most ultimate rule. Do not fall in love. Woo! And you find out that that is literally the premise of the entire book. There is spice. There is Danny Phantom vibes. It's a competition. I absolutely loved this book. It's an easy read. Definitely read it. Check it out. Let us know what you think about it. My least favorite of October was the Naplex RX Prep book. Now, for those of you who don't know, that is the book that you can use to study from to take your pharmacist boards. Now, okay, I guess I have to give it at least a 3 stars because I did pass. Woo! But this book is so dense. There was so much to it. It was like literally 1,000 pages. That's dramatic, but it is up there in pages, and it is so boring. Yes, it's useful information. Yes, it helped me pass, but I'm so glad that's over. All right, moving on to November, my favorite book of November, which we just covered on the podcast, is The Songbird and the Heart of Stone by Carissa Broadbent. This is the 3rd book in the Crowns of Neaxia series, and this is the 1st book in the Shadowborn duet. So the first 2 books in the Nightborn duet follow Rain and Aurea, and this one follows Misha and Asar. This book holds such a place in my heart. This book is for all of the people pleasers out there. This book is for those who feel like they have fallen and can't get back up. The journey that Misha goes through is just absolutely incredible, and I have not stopped thinking about this book. When we did the podcast on it, and since we already have an episode out, I feel like I can talk about it a little bit. We both kind of brought down our ratings from a 5 to a 4.5. However, I feel like the more that I think about this book, the more I'm appreciating the journey for Misha herself. And I absolutely love that. I'm still probably going to keep it at a 4.5 because I feel like that's pretty good. However, there is something about Misha that I am absolutely in love with, and Asar as well. I'm just obsessed with their whole journey. The concept behind this book is absolutely incredible. We received an art copy of this that didn't have the art in the book. And so when I first started reading the book, I was a little lost, to be honest. However, I did have this pre-ordered, and I kept that pre-order because, this is absolutely gorgeous. And the Crowns of Neaxia, the first 2 of the series, so The Serpent and the Wings of Night, as well as The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, have beautiful art. Absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely. And on the back it says, "This is the tale of how a chosen one falls." The premise of the book, I just, oh my god, if you guys haven't picked this up and read it yet, I am begging you to. I am absolutely begging you to. The Crowns of Neaxia series were my favorites of 2023, and we do have podcast episodes on those ones as well. So go ahead and listen to those. This is a different story. It's a completely different story, but it is just as good. Goodreads labels this as ACOTAR meets Dante's Inferno, and honestly, I feel like that is such a good depiction of how this book goes. Freaking amazing. I can't say enough good things. Carissa Broadbent, if by any chance you are tuned in to us, we would love to interview you about this series. We would love to chat with you. We have questions. We just want to gush about how much we absolutely adore this book. This is so amazing. Carissa Broadbent, you are a genius. So anyways, back to what I was saying with having the physical copy versus having the art copy. The physical copy here has the artwork on it, and so I was able to picture those levels to the underworld where the art copy did not have those, and so I had a really hard time picturing what the heck they were saying when they were going through all this. Having the map is such a game changer, you guys. Oh my gosh, I can't say enough good things about this book. Anyway, go listen to our podcast episode on it. I'm going to stop gushing about it. My least favorite book of November was The Inmate by Frida McFadden. I'm going to preface by saying I do really like Frida McFadden books. I love a good thriller, especially if I have a whole heap of fantasy books I've been reading. I absolutely love a good thriller that's going to break that up. The Inmate. I think I really liked it up until maybe 75% of the way. You have plot twist after plot twist after plot twist, and by the third or fourth one, I was like, okay, we get it. Enough with the plot twist. Like, it was just a little much for me, and I just did not enjoy it. I still finished it because I was listening to it. However, you know what? It's never going to be one of those books where I pick it up again and I'm going to want to read it again. I love Frida McFadden books though, so definitely let me know which ones you guys prefer and which ones you don't prefer of those thriller recommendations. And on to our current month. So while I'm recording this, we're about halfway through December. And so I can only say where my month is at so far. However, I know the book that I have as my most favorite will not change. In fact, this might actually be one of my most favorite books that I have read all year. We just had book club about it, and we had like 18 women show up, and that was absolutely incredible. We did a fun little gift exchange. We pulled our names for what book we're going to be reading in January. And I just feel so blessed to be a part of such a great book community. So thank you all so much. I love you all so much. Anyway, the book that I have as my most favorite book, which might also be my most favorite book of the entire year, is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. We will be doing a podcast episode on this one. Stay tuned. We will, I promise. There is just such an intricate world. There is an entire glossary in the beginning of the book that describes to you what the time looks like, where they're at, what types of dragons we have. And I'm going to be real honest with you guys. I skipped over it when I first started reading. It was a little much, okay? And when I got into it, I had so many questions, and I was able to go back and just reacquaint myself with the terminology and the time frames, and I loved it. I loved that the world was so intricate that there needed to be a glossary. I loved the characters. I'm obsessed with the female main character. She's so funny to me. I know that some people in our book club actually had some issues with her, but I really appreciated her. I really enjoyed her. So I'm very excited to have a female main character that I can absolutely root for. The tension, the love interest, the cliffhangers. Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh, I absolutely loved this one. So stay tuned. We will do a podcast episode on it. So we will see you guys for this book then. And honestly, I don't have a least favorite book I've read so far this month. I have read a couple of other ones. However, they've been pretty good. And I don't want to say that any one of them has been my least favorite yet. So I'm just going to leave it at that. So here we have my favorites and my least favorites in 2024. As I kind of said in the beginning, I don't even know where this year went. This is absolutely crazy to me. I cannot believe that it is December, that Christmas is right around the corner. New Year's is one of my favorite holidays because to me it feels like a fresh start. Not only do I look forward to that fresh start every single year, I love reflecting on what the year before has looked like. So something like a 2024 reading wrap-up is so exciting for me because I totally forgot that it was this year that we reread Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, that we did Crescent City on the podcast. How has it been a year? That is literally so crazy to me. Over this year, we have grown so much, and we have so many new book friends, and our book club has grown so much, and I just want to say we could not be here doing this without all of you. So thank you so much. We hope you stick around for 2025. Stay tuned for some really exciting episodes. And again, as we kind of said in the beginning, Leave your comments for what we have to cover in 2025. We've got some books already on our list, but then we have others that we would love to hear from you guys. So with that, we will see you guys next week. Bye!